Welcome to Living the Scriptures, our weekly session to dive deep into one particular line, into one particular point of this infinite line of wisdom and revelation, and realize how that particular point is equally infinite. And it's a bottomless ocean of gifts for us to gather and share with others. So today we are getting together to continue embracing scripture and making it more living than what it already is by addressing one very short line coming from a commentary to Bhakti-rasāmṛta-sindhu written by Srila Jiva Goswami. So this comes from his commentary on verse 194, where he says, parodaye, dveṣo, mātsaryaṁ. That's it. Which translates as envy, mātsarya, is detestation of another's success. So today is the turn of envy. Many times we hear this list of capital sins in different traditions. In Christian tradition, they all speak about capital sins. In our tradition, Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition, we may not use the term capital sin, but there are some similar lists: kama, krodha, lobha, mada, moha, matsarya. Lust, anger, greed, madness, illusion, matsarya, envy. And many times we've heard from all those envy is the worst. So what to do with envy? Generally has been labeled, branded as the worst possible thing, and whomever has it is the most unbecoming thing you could possibly have. So sometimes we are even not only afraid of having envy, but ashamed of having it. And since envy is branded as such a bad thing, we are even afraid of even confessing that we have it, which makes probably the envy even worse, and so on and so forth. So personally, I think it's very important to redeem these capital sins. And what do I mean by this? Not only to embrace spirituality, embrace a virtuous life, so we are not embracing these shortcomings, this missing the market, this missing the target, hamartia, as it will be described, sin in Greek, missing the mark, lust, greed, anger, envy. But also to understand them with some degree of self-compassion, not self-indulgence, but self-compassion, so we can understand what's the background, what's behind lust, what's behind greed, what's behind anger, and we can really address them with understanding, and we can really integrate them into their original virtuous expression. So, for example, if we are speaking about lust, lust means desire. It's not limited to carnal desire. It's just desire. So many times, many of us who are, filled with desires, akama, sarvakama, Bhagavatam says, someone are sarvakama. They have all desires. But many of these people, which may include us, are people who think by having things, I will become more. So I have a small sense of identity, and I think that by increasing my possessions, my sense of I will increase by increasing my sense of my and mine. To give an example, greed could be seen in that sense as well. Lust could be seen as a sense of sense enjoyment, but sense enjoyment also is speaking about a misdirected identification and self-absorption with body and senses and missing sight of who we actually are. So my point is, there's a place to feel compassion for those situations, for those cases, to see those people as victims as well, not to justify any crime, anything, and everyone will have to take responsibility for their own acts. But still, we are victims in many ways. We are ignorant. We are acting out of blindness. That's basically the idea. When we say darkness, the darkness of ignorance, basically darkness means not something intrinsically evil. Basically, darkness means I cannot see. I'm blind. I cannot see, right? Darkness is generally connected with evil, But actually, darkness means I cannot see. And we shed light, now darkness is gone. I can see. That's why throughout scripture, the teachers, the gurus, are praised as giving proper eye, grieving proper seeing. They are defined as seers, tattva-darshin, rishi, seers of truth, shedding light into the darkness, allowing us to see. So many of these missing the marks, lust, greed, anger. Anger many times is what? I have a necessity and that necessity has not been satisfied and I'm angry. Or many times we are sad. Generally, as Father Richard will say, when men, especially men who has lots of trouble to deal with anger and to see what's behind that. I mean, they don't have trouble being angry, but we may have trouble in ascertaining what's behind the anger. And he will say, you are not angry, you are sad. So anger is just a superficial facade of what lies more deeply behind it. So my point with all this is we have to address these so-called capital sins with more understanding, with more self-compassion, by seeing what's behind the symptom, the more immediate external reaction, anger, this or that. As I say, I mentioned some words about lust, about greed, about anger. So what about envy, which is apparently the worst of them all? And generally, I've heard many times in my own tradition, in the discourses, when envy comes to the picture, it's very quickly stigmatized, crucified, and with it, whomever is indulging in it, which probably is almost all of us on some level or another. It's not that easy to be free from envy. So here, envy here is described as detestation of another's success. So again, the description may even give more reasons to not to derive, like, I don't want this envy. This is the worst of the worst. I detesting the success of someone else. I'm such a poisonous snake that I'm envy. Instead of celebrating the other person in their happiness or joy or success, I'm hating that. I'm unable to tolerate other people's attainments. So it's such an unbecoming thing. And it is, of course. Here we are not praising nor prescribing envy. But my point with this is, what's behind that? What's behind that detestation? What's behind that hate? What's behind that incapacity to tolerate my brother's success, my sister's happiness? Why so unbearable to me? Because I'm intrinsically evil? Because I actually hate the other person? No. What's going on is that I have such a poor sense of self, such a poor self-image, that whenever someone is attaining something, doing something good, my already poor sense of self become even the more threatened. And therefore, I cannot tolerate that. I need to eliminate that. Envy means that, basically. It's not only that I'm jealous. Envious is another level. I'm jealous. It's okay. I like to have that. But I don't feel compelled to nullify the other person, to erase the whole thing. But in envy, I feel so threatened by the other person's qualities, attainments, gifts, success, that I need to eliminate that. In one way or another, we are not saying we will end up eliminating the person, but maybe I need to make that person disappear from my life. And internally, I will feel so bad about myself. Though externally, it may show us I'm hating the other person. I want the worst for the other person. I want the other person to disappear. I want the other person to fail miserably. Actually, it's never about the other person. It's not personal. It's personal in regards to myself. I feel so threatened and I don't have the capacity to realize my poor self-image. So I'm projecting everything onto the outside instead of taking personal responsibility and saying, I have a very fragile, broken, fragmented, fractured sense of self. So whatever appears a little bit more whole than me becomes a threat because it mirrors back my own brokenness And I cannot tolerate that. I'm not strong enough to see that. I'm not courageous enough to confront my own brokenness. So I need to project all that onto the environment, onto the outside. I need to create enemies. That's what Srila Siddhartha Maharaj will say, weak faith requires an enemy. We could say here, weak sense of self requires envy, requires projection, requires positioning the problem outside of us. You are such a bad person. You are such a threat. You are so whatever. You need to die. You need to be eliminated. You need to fail. But at the end of the day, it has nothing to do with the environment. An envious person will never be at peace, because even if someone is successful and I want you to fail miserably for me to be at peace, imagine that. I need you to fail so I can be at peace. It has nothing to do with the other person. It's just with my, and of course, when the other person fails, I may experience some so-called experience of peace for 1 second, but very quickly I'm anxiety again, because I have not solved anything actually. I've just dealt with the symptoms superficially, externally, and the problem only became bigger. And very quickly someone else will be the object of my envy, and I will be feeling the threat in that new direction, and so on and so forth. So it's a complex scenario, but again, it all springs from a very weak sense of self. And that weak sense of self not only feels threatened by other people's success, but it feels threatened by having to confront one's own weakness and one's own limitation. So that's the best thing that an envious person can receive. The best gift is a very loving, compassionate support that will assure to them, you are enough as you are whole, you are loved by Krishna. Don't be afraid of addressing your own limitation, addressing your own weakness, addressing your own shortcomings. You are still accepted, you still belong. You don't need to feel threatened by anyone. There are no enemies on the environment. Now nobody's against you personally. And they may need to go through that treatment over and over again. So in this way, when here Jiva Goswami is saying, parodaye, dveṣo, mātsaryaṁ, or envy means detestation of another success. It doesn't mean that the person is intrinsically evil or bad, that we need to hate them because they are so envious and so evil. We are just contributing to the vicious circle. We need to break the circle by compassionately glancing at that situation with deeper understanding and saying, oh, behind this envy, there is something deeper. There is a broken soul. Behind all these capital sins, there is brokenness that needs to be addressed with compassion and understanding. Behind this envy, there is someone with a very poor self-image that feels very easily threatened by anyone's improvement or success. And therefore, they need to cancel that because they don't have the strength, the capacity, the maturity of looking back to themselves with proper light. There's too much darkness. They cannot see properly. So the best thing, we can shed light with compassion, with affection, with company. So gradually, this person, which may include ourselves again, gradually can dare to look at our own brokenness and heal that and embrace that and accept ourselves, and do not stop seeing the environment as unfriendly, threatening, what to speak, but loving, friendly. And you ultimately realizing, I'm amidst family. You ultimately, there's only one family. There's no fracture, there's no division, but we have to start somewhere. So a few thoughts that I want to share with you today. Please feel free to share your own thinking, your own experience, your own insights in regards to envy and to all these different so-called capital sins, and how we can deal with them in the most wholesome, comprehensive way, so we can actually transcend them by properly understanding and integrating them into their most healing dimensions. Thanks so much, and see you in our next week, in our next session of Living Scripture.